The last breath of a giant. How the largest empire of the 20th century collapsed. The scale of the empire. Imagine a country that occupied 1/6 of the entire Earth's land surface. It was 22,400,000 square kilometers, a territory surpassing the United States of America and Europe combined. It stretched across 11 time zones, and when the sun was just rising on one end, it was already setting on the other. Nearly 300 million people lived in this country. By the early 90s, the population was 293 million. This was the Soviet Union, a state that could destroy the world and, at the same time, could not feed its own people. The USSR was not just a country it was a global civilizational project, uniting 15 republics: Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, Moldova, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. A global superpower and the nuclear shadow. By the end of the 80s, the USSR was one of the world's two superpowers. The country's arsenal held about 45,000 nuclear warheads and more than 1,400 intercontinental ballistic missiles, with a range of up to 16,000 kilometers. The world rested on a fragile balance of fear and the doctrine of mutually assured destruction. The symbol of this power was space. The first satellite, the first human in orbit, the first space stations. Every launch told the world, we can. The economy of illusions and the gold hunger. Formerly, the Soviet economy was considered the second largest in the world. By purchasing power parity, its volume was estimated at $2.7 trillion to $2.8 trillion. But this system was isolated from the world. The Soviet ruble was not convertible. Officially, $1 cost 56 kopecks, but in reality, it cost dozens of times more. The country suffered from a currency hunger. When oil prices fell in the 80s, the empire began to eat away at its own future. The gold reserve shrank from 2,500 tons to a critical 240 tons. Moscow secretly sold off gold just to buy bread. People had billions of rubles in their accounts, but there was nothing to buy. It was a money overhang that led to empty shelves and endless lines. Ukraine, the hidden giant amidst empires. Ukraine was the industrial and technological heart of this system. With a population of 51,800,000 people, it was the largest country in Europe. In January 1991, it smelted 55 million tons of steel, more than France, Italy, and Canada combined. This was 41% of all the Soviet Union's steel. A plant in Luhansk produced 95% of all the mainline diesel locomotives in the country. All Soviet aircraft carriers were built only in Mykolaiv. Furthermore, Ukraine possessed the world's third largest nuclear arsenal, approximately 1,700 warheads. It was a breadbasket, producing 6 million tons of sugar and 1 ton of grain for every inhabitant. But due to Moscow's inefficiency, coupons and ration cards were introduced in Ukraine itself. January 1991. The anatomy of collapse. January became the month of the USSR's financial suicide. On January 22nd, the Pavlov reform began. The sudden withdrawal of 50 and 100 ruble banknotes. The savings of 290 million people turned to dust. While the average American earned $2,100, the real income of Soviet citizens was only $10 at the black market exchange rate. The world in January 1991 lived at different speeds. In the United States, it was the triumph of Whitney Houston and the premiere of The country was united and full of optimism. This is the story of how one superpower confirmed its leadership through technology, while the other tried to survive by taking money from its citizens. On January 20th, 800,000 people marched in Moscow in support of Lithuania. Faith in a renewed union was finally buried under tank treads. On television at that time, they showed psychic healing sessions in Swan Lake. While the United States was entering the Internet era with 50 million computers, the USSR had fewer than 200,000. While American aircraft carriers demonstrated the power of smart bombs in Iraq, Soviet tanks stormed television centers in Lithuania. January 1991 became bloody and finally buried all faith in the Union. Freedom. Against the system. The Soviet Union did not lose a war to an external enemy. It did not fall under the strike of missiles or an invasion of armies. It collapsed under the weight of its own inability to change. It was a colossus with feet of clay, which learned to split the atom and build orbital stations, but never learned the most important thing: to respect its citizens' right to freedom and a dignified life. This lesson remains relevant today. The power of any state is measured not by the number of nuclear warheads, but by the quality of its people's lives and the system's ability to look into the future. While the USSR continued to invest in cast iron, control, and the past, the rest of the world was already moving into the era of information and personal freedoms. Ukraine, in January 1991, realized it was a powerful but blocked mechanism. It had missiles capable of reaching the stars, factories that built aircraft carriers, and land that gave millions of tons of grain. Only one detail stood in its way: the rusty chain of a system that pulled it to the bottom along with a dying empire. Looking back, we see more than just the disintegration of a country. We see the birth of a new reality. The price of this transformation is staggering. Just look at the price of gold. In January 91, a kilogram cost $11,650. And today, in January 26, the price has surpassed $170,300. Values change. Gold becomes more expensive, but the most precious resource on the planet remains the freedom to choose your own path. The year 1990 was a time of hope, endless lines, and the first intoxicating breaths of freedom. The collapse of the USSR became one of the most important events of the 20th century. 15 countries became independent, inheriting nuclear weapons, factories, and a ruined economy. This legacy still affects our world. And what do you remember about this atmosphere? How did this time remain in the memory of your families or in the history of your city? Let's discuss this in the comments. Every memory of yours is important to us, and don't forget to subscribe. Our marathon on the history of the 90s is just beginning, and we have many more exciting investigations ahead. Like this video, share it with your friends, and be sure to hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next chapter. It will only get more interesting from here as we enter the decade that changed everything. See you in the next episode.